Okay, so when we think about AI dominance, the conversation usually lands squarely on the U.S. and China. It's almost a given. But there's something else happening, maybe a bit under the radar, but potentially huge. Saudi Arabia and the UAE.
Exactly. It's this unexpected emergence we're seeing. And we're not just talking small change. There's serious money involved, serious developments lately.
Right. So this deep dive, we want to really get into why this is happening now. What's enabling these Gulf nations to even think about becoming AI players?
Yeah, we've been looking at some recent analysis, especially insights from Mookie Tenenbaum, trying to piece together how this shift is occurring.
We know the big players, the established giants, but what we're digging into today is what are the conditions letting Saudi Arabia and the UAE join the race? What are the key ingredients? What are the challenges? Because there will be challenges. And, what does this mean for everyone else? Okay, let's start with the obvious, maybe. The money. And it seems like Trump's visit to Saudi Arabia is kind of a key moment here.
Well, yes, and Tenenbaum's perspective on this is interesting. That visit, framed around this make money, not war idea, it sort of sets the stage, provides context for what followed.
Absolutely. Because we saw huge investments, right? Big arms deals, Saudi money flowing into the U.S.
Massive deals.
And it looks like there's a quid pro quo, or at least a connection, to getting access to AI tech. Is that the sense?
That seems to be the crucial shift. The reporting suggests Saudi Arabia and the UAE now have the green light, let's say, to buy those really specific high-end AI chips, which, loosens the U.S. monopoly on who gets this critical hardware.
And this is where it gets really tangible. That huge NVIDIA chip order from Saudi Arabia, that made waves.
Big wave.
Not just a statement. It actually boosted NVIDIA's stock, especially after the China restrictions kicked in. What does that signal?
It signals they're serious, for one, but fundamentally, if you want to do cutting-edge AI, you need these specific chips. It's the absolute choke point. Without them, it's mostly just talk.
Right. And as Tenenbaum laid out, this market is incredibly concentrated. You've got ASML in the Netherlands making the machines.
Unbelievably complex machines.
Then TSMC in Taiwan actually making the chips, and NVIDIA in the U.S. designing them. It's a tiny club.
A triopoly, essentially. And that concentration gives those countries, particularly the U.S. and the Netherlands, huge leverage over who gets to play in the advanced AI space.
So before this shift, access was tiered, wasn't it? Like Western Europe, Japan, South Korea, Singapore, fewer problems.
Yeah, relatively easier access.
But Saudi Arabia, UAE, even Israel needed special permission. And then China, Russia, others were basically locked out.
Exactly. And understanding that tier system really highlights China's current disadvantage. They've got the ambition, the investment, but getting those absolute top-tier chips, that's a major roadblock for them right now.
Okay, so the money seems to have bought access, at least for now. But it can't be that simple. What are the hurdles? What are the uncertainties for Saudi Arabia and the UAE?
Well, first off, the political system itself. These are dictatorships, absolute monarchies. That brings questions about, long-term stability. What happens if there's a sudden change in leadership or policy direction?
That's a big one. And the geopolitical risks, too, right? The worry that this tech could end up somewhere it shouldn't. Tenenbaum mentioned that Malaysia example, chips being diverted to China.
Right, that's a perfect illustration. It shows how hard it is to actually control the flow of this stuff once it's out there. You can bet the U.S. is watching very, very closely.
And what about relying on the U.S.? Access granted today could be access revoked tomorrow, couldn't it? Could the U.S. pull the plug or control the tech later?
Well, pulling the plug on individual chips already sold is probably unlikely, as Tenenbaum suggested, but the U.S. does have influence over ASML, the machine maker, so they could potentially restrict the equipment needed to make future chips, which is a longer-term lever of control.
Okay, let's talk people. The human factor. Getting the world's best AI minds to move to Riyadh or Dubai? That sounds tough.
Oh, it's a massive challenge. Absolutely critical. You can offer huge salaries, sure, but you're dealing with extreme heat, sometimes poor air quality like in Dubai, and significant social restrictions, especially in Saudi Arabia. We're talking limits on personal freedoms, women's rights, alcohol bans.
Things that top researchers who already earn a lot and could work anywhere might not want to deal with. They often value quality of life, intellectual freedom, a stimulating environment.
Exactly. Is the money enough to outweigh all that? For some, maybe. But for the very top tier, the innovators, it's a harder sell.
which leads to the whole infrastructure question, right?
Yeah.
It's not just about buying chips. You need an ecosystem.
Precisely. You need skilled people at every level, not just the superstars. You need universities, research centers, a culture that fosters innovation.
And that's where, Tenenbaum drew that comparison. Saudi Arabia doesn't have the established university and research base that, say, Israel has built up over decades in the tech space.
Correct. So there's a huge need to train local talent, which takes time, and also attract foreign experts, not just to do research, but to help build that local capacity to teach.
And the environment, again, literally, that extreme heat, running massive data centers requires incredible amounts of cooling. Even if energy is cheap, that's a huge technical hurdle.
It really is. The energy grid itself needs to be incredibly robust, and the sheer cost and complexity of keeping those AI systems cool in 50 degrees Celsius heat, it's significant.
So does this push them towards outsourcing, maybe getting others to do the heavy lifting on development? But then how do you protect your secrets, your IP?
That's the risk with outsourcing, isn't it? You lose direct control, you risk your sensitive data and expertise leaking out or being used by others. It kind of undermines the goal of building your own capability.
And the Israel factor is interesting too. Saudi Arabia doesn't recognize Israel, which is a regional tech leader. That seems like cutting themselves off from potential collaboration.
It does create a barrier. Unlike the UAE, which has normalized relations and can tap into that regional tech scene more easily, Saudi Arabia's stance limits its options for partnership and knowledge sharing nearby.
Tenenbaum had that analogy.
Yeah.
The toys analogy. Is it possible the U.S. is just giving them enough tech to keep them happy, keep them spending, but not enough to become real rivals? Like shiny toys.
It's a provocative thought. And the fact that even Israel wasn't initially in that top tier for chip access, it does make you wonder if the U.S. is carefully managing potential future competition.
Could there be backlash later? Sanctions, maybe? If Western countries feel this AI development undermines their interests or values?
It's possible. Europe's influence might be limited right now in this specific tech area, as Tenenbaum noted, but sanctions are always a tool in the geopolitical toolbox if things are seen to be going too far or creating security risks.
Okay, let's circle back to the money, the oil money. That's the engine driving all this. How does that massive wealth shape their strategy?
Well, it gives them the means, obviously, but it's also about managing that wealth and influence. Tenenbaum pointed out they can influence oil prices, maybe keep them high enough to slow down investment in alternatives like fracking. It's strategic.
But they know the oil won't last forever. Estimates vary, maybe 30, 40 years, maybe longer if AI helps find more or extract it better, but still finite.
Absolutely. That's the huge motivator for diversification. AI is one bet, but you also see it in Dubai's focus on tourism, Abu Dhabi investing in culture like the Louvre. They have to build a post-oil future.
And Saudi Arabia's Vision 2030, is incredibly ambitious, transforming a deeply traditional society into a tech hub. People compare it to China's rise, but the starting points are so different.
Very different. Tenenbaum highlighted key distinctions: gender equality issues, the established work culture, the bureaucracy. It's not China. Trying to graft a hyper-modern tech sector onto that existing social fabric is old. It's a massive experiment.
Does that lead to a potential culture clash? Could Islamic principles or restrictions hinder the kind of freewheeling innovation AI often requires?
That's a sensitive but important question. Tenenbaum touched on how, historically, certain interpretations of religious doctrine can sometimes be at odds with open scientific inquiry. It's a potential friction point, how AI development aligns with or conflicts with deeply held cultural and religious values.
Looking globally, Tenenbaum used that phrase, Netflix of AI, for the U.S. Is the U.S. endgame just to be the main supplier, controlling the platform and distribution?
It's a compelling way to think about it. Maybe the U.S. strategy is less about stopping others completely and more about being the indispensable provider, controlling the terms, using AI dominance as a tool for continued global influence.
While Europe, maybe, takes a different route. More cautious, more regulated.
Yeah, the suggestion was Europe might be falling behind a bit due to that approach. Dictatorships, ironically, can sometimes move faster on big projects because they can bypass the lengthy debates democracies have about social or environmental impact.
And just briefly, Tenenbaum mentioned that worrying India-Pakistan water issue. Totally separate from AI, but a reminder of the instability in that wider region.
Exactly. India threatening to cut off water. It underscores the fragility. You have these huge tech ambitions happening alongside really dangerous fundamental resource conflicts. It's a complex world.
So, wrapping this up, Saudi Arabia, UAE, they're making a serious, well-funded push into AI. driven by oil money and the need to secure their future.
Definitely. The ambition and the resources are there. But as we've discussed, the path is loaded with challenges. U.S. control over key tech, the immense difficulty of attracting and keeping top talent, building that whole ecosystem from scratch.
Plus navigating the internal cultural landscape and the tricky geopolitics.
Right, all of that.
For me, the big takeaway, the aha moment, is really that money isn't enough. You can buy the chips, maybe, but you can't just buy AI dominance. The people, the culture, the politics, they matter just as much, maybe more.
Which leaves us with a final thought for you, the listener. Can nations with such strong traditional social structures, even with all the money in the world, truly become leaders in something as disruptive and fast-moving as AI? What fundamental changes might be required for that to happen? Something to think about.